If you spend any of your time building things in the digital world,
Hmm.
we've got a dense stack of material here detailing how some of the most successful founders and individual developers use this specific technical skill.
And not just to get a high-paying job. I think that's the key distinction we need to make right up front.
Exactly. Getting a good job is great, but this is about something else. This is about how they manufactured an actual scalable wealth asset.
Right. We need to move beyond that sort of general advice of, learn to code.
Yeah, that's too abstract.
It is. We're looking at the mechanics of conversion.
Mm.
The sources we've got explore this fundamental relationship between developing a very specific expertise.
Could be anything, right? Front-end speed, deep infrastructure, security.
Exactly. And then converting that hard-won friction that you feel every day into a high-value product or an indispensable system.
Okay, let's unpack this and get to the core economic argument immediately.
Hmm.
The question that's really underpinning all this research is, why is learning a technical skill and then deploying it through creation potentially more valuable than, say, just securing a six-figure job?
Because that job, as stable and great as it is still linear.
You trade 1 hour of your life for money. Once.
And that linearity is the ceiling. It's the ceiling most people never even look past. We have to establish this fundamental difference right now. A linear paycheck is a single transaction, hours for money.
You clock out, the income stops. You do it again tomorrow.
But a well-built piece of software, or a reliable automated system that's nonlinear, you put in the effort once to build it, and it can serve 10 users, 1,000 users, 10 million users.
And it earns repeatedly. The effort becomes a reusable asset.
Yeah. And this framework, it leads directly to what the sources call the builder's option.
I love this framing. Think about friction, the annoying repetitive tasks, the clunky workflows you deal with every day.
We all have them.
We all have them. And when most people, the non-technical folks, face this friction, they have like 3 default responses.
And none of them create wealth.
Not a single one. First, they complain. This is so hard. Second, they cope. They build messy workarounds, endless spreadsheets, manual copy pasting.
Or third, they consume. They buy more courses, watch more videos, read more tips. It feels productive, but it's just preparing to prepare.
But the technical builder, the person who can actually manipulate the digital world, they have this incredibly powerful fourth option: create.
They feel that friction, they internalize the pain of that repetition, and they immediately start thinking, how can I build something to eliminate this?
A tool, a script, an API, a full system, and not just for themselves, but, and this is the crucial part, for others.
And that tool, once it's built and shipped, that's the scalable asset. That's the thing that can work 24/7 without their continued hourly involvement.
So the roadmap we have for you today is built around 6 specific principles. These aren't, abstract business school concepts.
No, these are rules derived from real success stories. Each one is illustrated by a monumental example companies and developers who converted that internal pain into billions of dollars.
Yeah, we're going to move systematically through the technical stack. We'll start at the user experience layer and go all the way down to deep infrastructure to see how these principles really work.
It's a roadmap for turning competence into capitalization. And it starts with the most essential shift of all: realizing your code is an asset, not just a task deliverable.
Okay, so principle 1. We begin, fittingly, with the founding story of Shopify. It perfectly illustrates this asset mindset, that moment when an internal tool becomes the external product.
Right. And this story starts in Ottawa in the mid-2000s with Tobias Lütke. He had already made a big life change, moving from Koblenz, Germany to Ottawa in 2002.
He's working as a programmer, but his real passion is snowboarding.
Exactly. So Lütke and his partners want to create a business around that passion. A simple online snowboard shop. They call it Snowdouble.
This is the classic scratch your own itch scenario, right?
It is, but what elevates it is his technical background, because he immediately runs headfirst into this massive wall of friction that everyone trying to sell online at that time faced.
And we really need to put ourselves back in 2004 here. Today, if you want an online store, you pick a platform, you sign up in maybe 10 minutes, and you're selling.
Not then. In 2004, the e-commerce tools were just a nightmare. You were wrestling with this clunky proprietary software, often written in aging languages, complex databases.
Terrible user interfaces. Just changing a button color could be a whole day's work.
The sources highlight that Lütke found these tools to be incredibly limiting. They fundamentally prevented him from creating the clean, intuitive buying experience he wanted for Snowdevil.
He was probably spending, what, 80% of his time just fighting the platform.
That's the number. 80% of his time debugging the platform, 20% actually selling snowboards. That ratio is just completely unsustainable.
And this is that moment. This is the hinge where 99% of people would have quit or just coped.
Sure, they'd have picked the least worst platform, used a bad template, and just lived with the clunky limitations. They'd chalk it up to the cost of doing business.
But Lütke, because he had that technical skill, he had the builder's option. He didn't accept the limits of the market. He decided to build a platform that would eliminate those limits.
And his technical choice here is absolutely critical for understanding the leverage he created. He chose to use Ruby on Rails.
Which was not the obvious choice at the time.
Not at all. It wasn't just picking a language. It was a fundamental bet on a new, fresh, open-source web framework. Rails was still pretty early in its life cycle.
So let's spend a minute on that, because this specific technical detail is what generated the wealth. Frameworks, especially Rails at that time, they just compress development time.
They do. It's because of a philosophy called convention over configuration.
What does that mean in practical terms?
It means Rails took all of those hard-won decisions that every single web application needs: how to structure a database connection, how to manage routing, how sessions work, and it provided sensible defaults right out of the box.
So Lütke didn't have to reinvent the wheel for 90% of the back-end stuff.
Precisely. If you were building an e-commerce site from scratch with older methods, you might spend 3 months just setting up the database and the security layer before you even get to thinking about a shopping cart.
So Rails didn't just help him code faster, it helped him finish faster.
That's the key. If you're focused on building wealth by creating assets, the speed of finishing and deploying that first useful version is everything. It let him focus his unique effort on the unique problem: the beautiful storefront, the simplified merchant experience, instead of the commodity problems of the web stack.
So Snowdevil goes live, they sell some snowboards, but then Lütke has this uncomfortable realization that really defines the asset mindset.
He realized the store was fine, but the invisible software system underneath, the platform he had custom built in Rails that made selling so much simpler than every alternative on the market, that was the most valuable thing they had created.
The product wasn't the physical inventory. It wasn't even the brand name Snowdevil. It was the internal tool he'd engineered to manage that inventory.
That internal utility had a market value that just vastly exceeded the snowboards they were selling. It's this incredible moment of recognizing that your efficient, time-saving internal tool is actually the external product the market is desperate for.
And that recognition led to the explicit pivot. They shifted away from trying to win with inventory to trying to win with infrastructure. In June 2006, they launched that platform as Shopify.
And the core principle here is just so simple and undeniable. Wealth accelerates when effort turns into a reusable, nonlinear asset. The market rewards output that reduces someone else's time, risk, or confusion at scale.
So if we pull out the tactical advice from this, the first rule is foundational. Build for a real personal irritation.
Yes. If something annoys you every week, you can probably charge someone else to remove that annoyance every month, because thousands of other people have that exact same annoyance.
And you have to train the shipping muscle.
Yeah.
This is often the hardest part for technical people, right? The source material emphasizes this tactic of time boxing the first version to 14 days.
That intense short cadence is essential. It trains reliability, it forces ruthless prioritization, and it compels you to confront reality instead of staying in that comfortable, sterile space of just preparing.
And like Lütke's story shows, you have to use a framework on purpose. Pick one, Rails, Django, Node, whatever, and get dangerous with it. Leverage those hard-won decisions.
And finally, the critical test of value. Sell before perfecting. That $5 pre-order from a complete stranger is infinitely more informative than 500 likes from your friends.
It proves the value is real and monetizable. So the try this now step is deceptively simple. Write the one-sentence promise.
I help do without FAQ. That structure, it forces you to define exactly who you're serving, what outcome you deliver, and what friction you remove. That's the definition of market value. So if Principle 1 is about shipping the software, Principle 2 really gets into the technical layer that makes that software truly scalable and defensible, the infrastructure.
Right. And for this, we look at Jan Koum, the co-founder of WhatsApp. His journey is just a masterclass in turning operational knowledge into billions.
His background is absolutely critical to understanding WhatsApp's later focus. He arrives in Mountain View from Ukraine in 1992 as a teenager. He'd experienced hardship, relied on government assistance.
And that early life experience, it instilled these two non-negotiables that you see all over WhatsApp.
A deep instinct for simplicity and efficiency, and an almost paranoid focus on security and privacy. He knew what it was like to be watched.
He also didn't jump straight into application development. He studied at San Jose State University, and crucially, he worked as a security tester at Ernst & Young at the same time.
Think about that. His job was to see systems fail. He was exposed daily to data leaks, bad architecture, the true cost of negligence. He learned the value of robust systems by watching high-stakes meltdowns at huge corporations.
And that led him to a really interesting choice. It looks counterintuitive if you're chasing quick wealth.
Yeah.
He dropped out of college in 1997 to take an engineering role at Yahoo.
And he spent 9 years there working alongside Brian Acton. This was not the glamorous product team. This was his real education.
This was the boot camp of operational excellence.
Totally. He was an infrastructure engineer, the unsexy core of the internet. We're talking uptime, scaling, load balancing, managing databases under immense pressure.
Keeping the lights on.
Keeping the lights on. It's the kind of work that gets no applause when it's working, but brings the entire company to a halt when it fails.
Which sounds like hell, but that's precisely why it's so valuable. He was learning how the internet actually stays on.
So fast forward, September 2007. Coombe and Acton leave Yahoo. They take time off. And famously, they both apply to and get rejected by Facebook.
An amazing twist of fate, given what happened later.
It really is. The true hinge moment, though, arrives in January 2009. Coombe buys an iPhone, and he immediately sees the App Store not just as a consumer novelty, but as a powerful, free distribution machine.
A way to bypass the telecom carriers completely.
Exactly. A week after his 33rd birthday, he incorporated WhatsApp.
But the first version wasn't really a messaging app, was it? It was more for status updates.
That's right. It was designed to let people know if you were on a call or busy. It was a bit slow to catch on. The real technical shift, the moment that weaponized the platform, came in June 2009.
Apple added push notifications to iOS.
And Coombe, with his infrastructure instinct, immediately saw the potential. He changed WhatsApp so that when a user updated their status, it would ping everyone in their address book.
And that seemingly small technical change, leveraging a Core OS feature, was repurposed by users into real-time messaging.
That proves such an essential point. Distribution changes behavior. He didn't set out to build a better messaging app. He leveraged an underlying OS feature to create a faster, more reliable notification system that users then turned into messaging.
The outcome is history. Acquired by Facebook, February 19, 2014, for about $19 billion.
And that acquisition didn't happen because of a cute interface. It happened because he built an app that scaled reliably, stayed up under pressure, and focused on security from the ground up, all built on that decade of infrastructure mastery.
So the core principle is crystal clear. If coding is leverage, infrastructure is leverage with a lock. Wealth flows to those who can not only build the app, but reliably build and keep alive the messy systems underneath.
And this is why infrastructure skills have these three essential wealth-building properties. First, scarcity.
Right. Lots of people can build a nice landing page.
Very few people can debug a production outage at 2 a.m. and know exactly which logs to look at. That scarcity commands a premium.
The second is trust. When you're the operator, the person keeping the revenue system stable and online, you become essential. You're incredibly hard to replace.
And the third and most valuable property, ownership. If you really understand the whole pipeline, the networks, the databases, the deployment process, you don't need permission from anyone to ship your idea and scale it globally.
This is why the sources stress learning the boring 5 fundamentals: HTTP, databases, networking basics, Linux, and logs.
I know they sound like college syllabus terms, but let's be blunt. This is where the money hides. This is the unsexy, stable core of the digital economy.
Why are they the moneymakers, though? Let's get specific.
Okay. Knowing Linux isn't just about being efficient. It's about ultimate cost control. Scaling an app costs exponentially less if you can configure resource limits yourself. Understanding databases means your systems don't grind to a halt under massive user loads. And logs. Logs are your memory. You can't solve a problem you can't see.
And the practical advice is not just to learn this stuff theoretically. It's to adopt the operator's mindset. Run a small production system.
Yes. Practice the boring parts weekly. Monitoring, rollbacks, backups, writing incident notes. That commitment is what turns theory into wealth.
And what we see in Coombe's past: treat security as a default, not a feature. His early work as a security tester is a direct line to WhatsApp's later success with end-to-end encryption.
It prevents catastrophic risk. A data breach can erase a company's value overnight.
So the challenge for you, the listener, the Try This Now step, is all about building this operational muscle. Deploy a simple web page or API publicly today.
But don't just make it work. Add basic observability, a health check, a log view, an alert, and most importantly, practice one failure drill.
Intentionally break something.
Yes, break it, restore it flawlessly, and write a 10-line postmortem. Because when you can reliably keep systems alive, you stop begging for opportunities and you start controlling the flow of value.
Okay, we've shifted gears now from the back-end plumbing of reliability to the front-end act of creation and release. We're focusing on Marcus Persson in Minecraft.
And the core idea here is so simple, yet it's probably the single biggest psychological barrier that most technical people face.
Which is?
Finishing beats perfecting.
Persson himself said this, right? That the most valuable thing he learned was developing the muscle of actually finishing projects.
An elegant idea that's just sitting in a private Git repo or on your local machine is worth exactly zero. A rough, ugly, shipped product is already generating value, and more importantly, it's generating feedback.
Minecraft is the absolute perfect example of this. It didn't start as some grand, polished launch. It was a tiny, rough public experiment.
The hinge date was May 17th, 2009. Persson posted the very first public version on the TigSource forum. It was literally him opening the workshop door and saying, hey, look at this ugly thing I made.
And TigSource is important context here. This is a highly technical, often brutal indie game dev forum.
This wasn't posting to some general consumer site for polite encouragement. This was publishing to a skeptical audience of fellow builders. And the feedback loop was immediate. It was profound.
The community formed so fast. And they weren't just playing. They were posting screenshots of their blocky creations, suggesting features, testing the limits.
They basically became a distributed, real-time development and QA team. The market, the actual end users, told him what to prioritize and what to fix.
And that's the moment a technical hobby becomes a wealth-capable asset. Your skill stops being private practice and becomes public value.
You're exchanging the short-term comfort of private perfection for the long-term reality of market collision. And you need that collision.
Because it reveals the truth about utility, the core principle. Wealth follows finished things that can scale without your hours. Our prototype isn't just a smaller product. It's a faster, cheaper conversation with the market.
And the longer you delay that conversation, the longer you're just building in the dark, based on your own assumptions, not on reality.
I think we need to emphasize the psychological cost of this. The sources draw this sharp contrast between two habits. There's the private perfection habit.
Learning, refining, polishing, writing perfect documentation, waiting until it's flawless. It feels responsible and professional.
But it leaves you poor in market feedback. And often it just masks a simple fear of judgment.
Totally. Meanwhile, the prototype mindset flips the whole sequence. Expose reality early, measure what people actually do with the rough version, and iterate rapidly. Shipping ends arguments instantly.
Preparation can feel productive forever, but it's usually just high-effort procrastination.
So how do we actually do this? The tactics are all about minimizing scope and maximizing exposure. First, you have to rigorously define prototype as one lovable interaction.
One core loop, one tangible outcome.
If you can help someone complete that one thing perfectly, you have a prototype.
And publish where the feedback is native, like a person using a dev forum. You need to be where the reaction is quick and often productively harsh.
Politeness hides the truth about a lack of utility. If people aren't using your rough script, a slick website isn't going to fix that.
And you have to instrument the truth. Track one number that signals real use, a save count, a repeat login, a completed task, not vanity metrics like page views or likes.
If the asset isn't generating real repeated use, you're building the wrong thing.
It takes genuine guts, though, doesn't it? Just the sheer psychological pressure of exposing something you know is buggy or ugly just to get that early feedback.
It's probably the single biggest non-technical barrier, but overcoming it is essential for asset creation.
So the Try This Now step is designed to overcome that inertia. Choose a 48-hour build.
A tiny script or app that solves a personal weekly annoyance. Publish it with one screenshot and ask one specific actionable question. What's the first thing you try to do with it?
And then you have to commit to building the top answer. That's how you build value based on verifiable demand, not just your own speculation. Okay, so if the first three principles are about getting something built, operating it, and then getting it out the door, principle 4 is about the technical discipline you need to maintain it under pressure.
Right. And this is where Eric Yuan and Zoom come in, proving that reliability, which is so often overlooked in the chase for new features, is the ultimate wealth strategy.
Yuan's story has incredible weight because he was the quintessential insider. He was a Cisco WebEx executive after Cisco acquired WebEx in 2007.
So he didn't have to guess what was broken. He saw the internal customer data, the support tickets, the user friction every single day. The gap was a chasm.
Smartphones are becoming ubiquitous, but video meetings were not mobile-friendly. The quality was just subpar. Drop calls, frozen screens.
He was solving a highly visible, expensive problem that cost his employer and its customers huge amounts of frustration. So in 2011, Yuan proposed modernizing Cisco's platform, focusing on a seamless, smartphone-friendly system.
And here's the core moment of conversion.
Yeah.
The proposal was rejected.
Cisco leadership preferred to stick with the existing profitable but legacy product architecture, and that rejection is the true hinge moment for wealth creation.
A non-technical person accepts the corporate no and just keeps coping.
But a technical builder internalizes that failure of the institution and chooses implementation over seeking permission.
Okay, I need to pause here and challenge that narrative a bit.
Mm.
Yuan left and started a company initially called Sosby in April 2011. And he took 40 engineers with him. Doesn't that sound less like technical excellence and more like a huge, well-funded organizational coup? How do the sources justify that Zoom's success was engineering-driven, not just capital-driven?
That's a fair question, and the answer is in the specific technical promise they made from day one. Yes, they started with significant talent, but their initial funding was relatively modest compared to the giants they were competing against.
So Cisco, Microsoft.
Exactly. The sources emphasize that their differentiation wasn't price. It wasn't a massive feature list. It was a singular, technically demanding promise: frictionless communication and reliability.
So they bet that engineering excellence, not marketing spend, could be the differentiator. They chose to solve the foundational architectural problem that WebEx had failed to address.
Which was reliability under varied low-bandwidth conditions, especially on mobile. That's it. The core principle is that reliability creates trust at scale. In communications, reliability isn't a feature, it is the product.
If your video call fails during a job interview or a big sales pitch, you will never trust that software again.
Never. Regardless of how many new features they built on later, and that operational trust is the wealth multiplier. It compounds in 3 ways.
Sure.
Adoption, because people effortlessly switch to what just works. Retention, because they stay with the tool that doesn't embarrass them. And referrals, because they recommend what they implicitly trust.
And that operational excellence requires real, difficult engineering. When we talk about one-click join, that's not a UI tweak, that's architecture.
It required sophisticated load balancing, clever use of protocols like UDP for real-time video, building self-healing connections. They dedicated their engineering efforts to making the hard parts invisible to the user.
This is why skills like deep monitoring, precise system design, and brutal root cause analysis become so valuable. They build that invisible reputation, the foundation of trust, that drives scalable outcomes.
The tactics, therefore, emphasize being prepared for failure. You have to master the failure basics. Logs, metrics, alerts, and root cause analysis. If you can't see a failure coming, diagnose it, or explain it, you're just operating on luck.
And the Zoom story teaches us to design for the bad days, not just the demos. Slow networks, old devices, sudden traffic spikes, that's where trust is really tested.
And you have to write down an explicit SLO, service level objective, a quantifiable promise like 99.9% uptime, and then defend it with architecture and discipline.
So the try this now step reinforces this operational rigor. List the top 3 ways one of your small systems can fail catastrophically.
Add 1 visibility hook logging, a metric, and alert. Then run a stress drill. Break it, restore it, and write a concise postmortem on what you'll change. In a noisy market, the richest skill is making things that just don't break under pressure.
We focus mostly on creation so far, building new things. But Principle 5 shows a totally different, highly lucrative path to technical wealth: diagnosing expensive mistakes.
Right, and for this, we look at the story of Santiago Lopez, a bug bounty hunter who turned security testing into a meritocratic, million-dollar asset.
His path is the ultimate example of the power of measurable technical output, independent of any formal credentials. In Argentina, in 2015, he was just 16 and entirely self-taught.
He was learning programming and ethical hacking from online resources, and he notes that finding his first real, validated vulnerability took serious, sustained persistence. It was not an instant thing.
But the key market discovery for him was the existence of bug bounty programs. This changed his technical interest from just a hobby into a clear, rule-based, income-generating game.
Test authorized systems, prove the vulnerability, report it professionally, and get paid handsomely. He saw it as a way to do what he liked, earn money, and make the digital world safer all at the same time.
This is the core wealth mechanic of security, isn't it? When you can spot and report vulnerabilities, you're not selling an opinion or an hour of your time. You are selling proof.
Proof of quantifiable risk that an organization needs to mitigate immediately. Security is the business of reducing catastrophic risk, and risk always has a budget, often a very large one.
And Lopez just ran with this system. He reported over 1,670 valid unique vulnerabilities to huge organizations.
Twitter, Verizon Media, WordPress Automatic, these aren't just theoretical weaknesses. These are verified holes that could have cost those companies millions in data breaches or reputation damage.
And the result speaks for itself. On March 1st, 2019, at the age of 19, he became the first bug bounty hacker to earn over $1 million in bounty awards on HackerOne.
And that wealth wasn't generated through a prestigious degree or networking. It was generated purely through verifiable, reproducible, valuable technical output.
So the core principle is that technical wealth is also built by diagnosing expensive mistakes. The bug bounty path is profoundly meritocratic. It requires a measurable output, not a perfect resume.
The market pays for the certainty of failure and the fix that prevents it. To succeed here, you have to master web fundamentals from a defensive point of view.
That means understanding HTTP, authentication flows, and common bug classes, like the ones on the OWASP Top 10.
And those aren't just academic lists. They are the list of common, expensive mistakes that organizations make over and over again. You are selling the solution to a 7-figure problem for a 5-figure fee.
The tactics here really emphasize discipline and ethics, though. This is a high-stakes domain.
Absolutely. You must stay legal and scoped. Only test systems that explicitly authorize it through a public bug bounty program. Curiosity does not protect you from consequences.
And you have to optimize relentlessly for report quality. The best hackers write reports like great forensic engineers. Clear, calm, reproducible, and fix-friendly.
You're selling a solution to the engineering team that has to fix it. Professional communication is essential for maximizing your bounty and your reputation.
So the try this now step, for you, the listener, focuses on training this specific diagnostic muscle. Pick one authorized program today on a platform like HackerOne and just summarize its scope.
Then, set up a safe practice environment, a local lab, and practice diagnosing one bug class end-to-end. And finally, write a gold standard report for a hypothetical bug you find.
Steps, screenshots, impact, a suggested fix. You're training the ability to sell proof and valuable knowledge before the stakes are real. You get paid to make the world safer, one verified expensive weakness at a time. So we've looked at creation and diagnosis. But diagnosing a risk or building an efficient internal script is only truly valuable for wealth generation if you package the fix or the tool into a system that can run without you.
And this brings us to Principle 6, focusing on Atlassian and the founding of Jira and Confluence by Mike Cannon-Brookes and Scott Farquhar.
This story starts in Sydney, early 2000s, and it's rooted in this internal, highly recurring friction point.
The pain of coordination. Tracking issues, knowledge management for software teams. It's a universally boring, constant, and frustrating problem for anyone trying to build complex things with other people.
The key move was recognizing this pain was universal, and then making a deliberate strategic choice. They chose to build a tool Jira 1.0 and Confluence 1.0 instead of selling custom hours of consulting.
And that choice immediately shifts their business model from the freelancer ceiling, which is a linear service, to the non-linear product curve.
That is the essential contrast. A skilled technical person can always make good money selling their time, but you're capped by 24 hours in a day.
Atlassian packaged their expertise into a repeatable digital asset. They didn't want to manage endless consulting contracts. They wanted to build systems that worked 204/7.
Their distribution strategy was revolutionary for the time. Farquhar himself notes they basically pioneered what we now call product-led growth, or PLG.
They made the radical choice to sell complex business software online with no salespeople. They eliminated the human gatekeeper who typically handles high-friction, high-cost software sales.
So let's define PLG in the context of Jira. What does that actually mean?
It means the product itself is the primary salesperson. This required Atlassian to engineer extreme self-service into the product.
Clean instant setup, transparent, low-friction pricing.
And documentation that worked perfectly at 1 a.m. because there was no human to hold your hand during the initial evaluation. The product had to be good enough to convince you to buy it without a single demo or sales call.
That requires immense faith in your engineering discipline. And adding to this, the company was famously bootstrapped for 8 years.
No outside VC money pressuring them into premature sales tactics or flashy marketing. They focused their resources entirely on building high-quality tools that developers actually needed, and they relied on the product's quality to drive adoption.
The core principle here is that wealth shows up when your technical skill becomes a scalable asset, not a custom service. Your expertise has to be translated into an automated delivery system.
And that requires this unique blend of engineering discipline and empathy. The tool has to work well, obviously, but the UX has to be obvious, the setup frictionless, and the documentation complete enough to solve problems remotely.
So how do we productize the pain in our own lives? The first tactical step is to figure out what to build.
Start with a workflow that repeats weekly. Repetition is demand in disguise. If you see your team doing the same manual process every Monday, that's not just an annoyance, that is your product.
Then focus ruthlessly on self-serve. Design the product so a total stranger can evaluate, purchase, install, and succeed with it, all without human intervention.
This extends directly to pricing. Price to remove hesitation. Avoid a price that requires a committee approval for the first purchase. Make it low enough that an individual user can just expense it.
And finally, you have to internalize this idea of turning support into product.
Yes. Every time a user asks a question, that question is a failure of your product's UX or documentation. That failure must lead to an immediate improvement, a clearer doc page, a tooltip, a better default setting. Support isn't a cost center, it's a diagnosis mechanism.
So the try this now step requires structured market thinking. List 5 work annoyances that waste 30 or more minutes of your week.
Pick the most frequent one and write a one-page spec for a tiny tool to standardize it. Then ship a self-serve V0.
And that means a landing page, maybe a simple demo, and a clear, simple way to pay or join a waitlist. You have to make the ability to try and buy possible in one click. So we've covered a massive amount of ground here. We looked at 6 distinct pathways, from Shopify's framework leverage and WhatsApp's infrastructure mastery to Minecraft's public prototyping.
Zoom's obsession with reliability, Santiago Lopez's security diagnostics, and Atlassian's radical productization of internal pain.
What's fascinating here is that the specific technical tool, whether it's Rails, Linux, C++, Ed, whatever, it doesn't matter as much as the mindset shift.
Right. All these examples, the founder, the lone hacker, the corporate executive who left, they all converted technical effort into a non-linear asset. They moved fundamentally from that mindset of consumption and coping to the mindset of creation and operation.
The common threads are undeniable. Competence and courage. You need the competence not just to build the prototype, but to keep these systems alive under pressure. That's operation.
And the courage to release it before you feel ready, that's shipping in charge for the quantifiable value it creates. That's productization.
The Linus Torvalds quote is so relevant to this entire discussion. Talk is cheap. Show me the code.
Exactly. The wealth is not in the potential or the elegant plan or the theoretical knowledge. The wealth is in the shipped, reliable, and scaled output that solves a quantifiable problem for a market of people who are currently just coping or complaining.
The knowledge itself is not the asset. The knowledge that is applied to solve someone else's expensive recurring problem at scale is the asset. And that asset requires you to operate it, defend it, and productize it.
And this raises an important question, something for you to mull over after this deep dive is done, focusing on your own life. Given the friction you face every single week in your professional life, the spreadsheets, the repetitive copy-paste, the waiting, the tracking, the buggy deployments, what tiny piece of software, if you started building the ugly minimum today, would be worth more than your entire year's paycheck in 5 years?
Go find that specific recurring friction and start building the asset that eliminates it.